I'm going to be making my own DIY dog backpack using my dog's regular harness and a extra makeup bag that I happen to have. So the plan for this is to use some regular nylon webbing to create straps on this bag and then attach it to this handle on her harness. Here are the materials that I'll be using. So I've just got some 1-inch nylon webbing. Here's a piece of scrap webbing that I cut to the size of these small buckles that I happen to have. So my plan will be to cut these webbing straps into this size, sew them so they're doubled over. This is 100% polyester thread that ends up being the strongest type of thread. I've just got some little clips in case they come in handy, a thread cutter. I'm planning to use 2 buckles and of course just some scissors. This nylon fabric really tends to fray a lot when you cut it. There's these little bits coming off, and we use a lighter to singe the ends together. There should be no soft edges after that. It should all be a little bit crispy. I usually just kind of eyeball it. No one's going to be looking at the underside of this anyway, so it's okay if it's not perfect. That's the correct width. Now would be the time to use your little binder clips. I'm just using one single strip, so I will fold it in half and then use a clip to keep things lined up. For thick fabrics, such as the nylon webbing, you'll want to be using a pretty high tension. I've been having success using a tension of 8. So just letting you know that I am not working with a foot pedal. It doesn't work on this machine. So I just have to use the little start-stop buttons up here. Every time I start a new stitch, I always go forward a couple stitches and then backwards a couple stitches. Since this is such a small amount of fabric going the short way, I'm just gonna do it with the dial here that controls the needle, as opposed to these buttons, because that will make it go too fast and go right over the edge. Okay, I've reached the end, so I'm gonna go ahead and backtrack a little bit and then just use the machine to backstitch. All right. I'll now sew it lengthwise on one side. Sometimes it can be helpful to kind of plant one finger here along the edge. I've reached my second clip, so I'm just going to backtrack a little bit and keep going. I went ahead and did my second seam along the edge. In retrospect, I wish I had done this one closer to the edge, but it is totally okay. And then I fed my small one end of the buckle through, stitched it in place, and just for good measure, I stitched the other side in place. I'll now make 3 more just like it. I've cut my next strip, and it is 4 times longer than the finished piece that I already made here, and that's because we're going to fold it over once and stitch it together, and then we'll feed the buckle through and fold it over again so it's in 1/4s. I've done kind of a dry fit on the harness to see where these straps would hit the end of the handle on the harness. I'll go ahead and start to attach it. I'm flipping the bag halfway inside out just so I can get better access to a flat surface under the machine. And then I'll be deciding which part of the buckle is the top part because I want that to be consistent. In this case, I'm just going to go with the fork part. A zigzag stitch may be effective for this one. I went pretty far here because the handle that I'm trying to attach it to is quite narrow. All it really needs room for is this action of buckling and unbuckling. It doesn't need a lot of slack. The pack was definitely starting to travel to the side, especially with weight in it as she was walking, and I think that will mess with her gait. So what I think I'm going to do is put some small loops with the nylon webbing that these will pass through, and then what that will do is hold it secure from going side to side. My first loop worked out pretty well, so I went ahead and folded the second loop. If you'll notice, it is facing the opposite direction. So the top is facing this way, whereas this top is facing that way. And I'll just go ahead and sew it together and attach it on the opposite side. My machine started having a bunch of problems there at the end, but I finally got them both attached. Not in the prettiest way, but they should stay on and they should hold it secure. In retrospect, I probably just needed to make these 2 loops. The buckles were probably unnecessary, but this was a bit of an experiment and it doesn't hurt to have additional security.